Alright guys, I'm not going to hold you guys for a long time tonight. But I gotta say this because it's just annoying the crap out of me. This whole thing about the protesters, the cops didn't, if the Capitol rioters would have been black, they would have been mowed down. It's a different response when it's Black Lives Matter protesters. And I need y'all to share this video, man. Share this video. It's a different response when it's BLM as to when it was white supremacists. First of all, let's get one thing straight. BLM, the protesters were 90% white. So whatever you think should have or shouldn't happen to BLM protesters because of race, they're 90% white. Second of all, the people on the other side protested. They don't give a crap about black people. They're not racist. They just white. They just white and not liberals. So since they're white and they're not liberals, they're not Democrats, they're called racist. You don't know what none of them people think about you. None of them people said nothing about no black people. So let's just get that out of the way first. Second of all, like this whole notion that the police were beating down Black Lives Matter activists and shooting them down like dogs in the streets during the protests, during the months and months and months and months and months and months and months of protests that took this city by storm, this country by storm. That's bull crap. Somebody got to just say that's crap. Officers were kneeling, taking the knee, kneeling to the protesters. Kneeling. All across the country, not just one time, one city, everywhere. The officers were standing back. They were not doing anything. The officers were criticized roundly all across the country for not doing anything when these people were looting and burning cities. I mean, just terrorizing cities. Officers were criticized. That was one of the biggest stories of the summer. That the police weren't doing anything about it. Is our memory that, like, I get social media and the microwave society we live in where everything's a story. A story's only a story for an hour till the next story. Stories that would have been stories for months, only stories for a few hours nowadays. Like Watergate would have been a story for a day. Nowadays, if it happened today, back then it was a story for like 10, 20 years. Watergate was a story. They were talking about that. Remember the little girl in the well? The little girl fell down the well. They were talking about that for 2 years. They might talk about that for 10 minutes today. So I get it. Things become microwave in this society. But come on, y'all. This was only a few months ago. The biggest story of the summer was the police are letting these people go around, destroy businesses, burn cities, burn down court buildings. In Seattle, they took over the entire area that the court building was in. The police precinct was in. They just took the entire area and claimed it for themselves. And this was just months ago. And now everybody's acting like this is the worst thing that's ever happened. Really? This thing at the Capitol riots was the worst thing that ever happened. An hour? This goes to show you privilege. Black folk and white liberals protested for 6 straight months. From the day George Floyd happened, May 25th, till early December when it was finally confirmed that Biden had actually won the election, allegedly. Until it was confirmed that Biden won the election, that 6-month period, it was protest every night in many cities. Many of them, they protested, and then they protested even harder if there was another killing of a black person. And the police did nothing.
Cheryl and Allen, the mayor, announcing 2 separate investigations of those officers, one by Internal Affairs, the other by the Civilian Office of Police Accountability. And she called on some of the still unidentified cops to come forward, saying, quote, "Don't make us come find you." The images show an officer lying on a couch, 2 others with their head on a desk, and another on his phone. The officers joined by 2 or 3 supervisors, one of them seen resting on a couch.
These individuals did indeed abandon their responsibilities and their obligation and their oath to serve and protect.
Mayor Lightfoot incensed as the city released the images. Captured officials say around the early morning hours of June 1st, as much of the city erupted in turmoil. The images taken inside the campaign office of Congressman Bobby Rush, which had been looted hours earlier.
They even had the unmitigated gall to go and make coffee for themselves and to pop popcorn, my popcorn, in my microwave.
Officials say the core group of about 13 cops spent about 4 or 5 hours at that office, while yards away this Southside strip mall near 54th and Wentworth was being pillaged.
I was standing shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of other officers on State Street as we got pelted with rocks from rioters. And that's occurring at the same time while these guys are inside having popcorn and making a pot of coffee.
Today, the mayor saying she would support efforts to require licensing and certification of officers.
It's time, really, actually, it's way past time for this change in our state.
The mayor was asked what should happen to those officers. If they should be fired, she would only say that the city should take the strongest possible action.
And it wasn't even just mayors and governors and city leaders from all these places complaining about the lack of response as BLM rioters destroyed businesses and whole business districts and just burned and pillaged, graffitied and tore these cities apart. It wasn't just lawmakers and officials complaining about the lack of response by the police. It was rappers. Rappers were complaining left and right about all these paid protesters, these paid BLM protesters descending on their cities and burning them to the ground. Rappers were incensed by this. Left and right, everywhere you looked. And they received backlash over it. Trina received a lot of backlash, but rappers were the voice of reason during the BLM protests. Like, stop, y'all. Y'all tearing all these cities up.
Mike, other artists, creatives, other people who come from our culture, and other people who rise up out of the wreckage of the struggle that we all experience just by being born a certain color in this country. But Atlanta is a place where we can set an example of prosperity, and we've done that for generations. People like Dr. King, Maynard Jackson, Ambassador Young have paved the way for us. When everything else goes away, when you don't get treated right in New York, when you don't get treated right in LA, when you can't get treated right in Detroit, when you don't get treated right in St. Louis, when you don't get treated right in Alabama, Atlanta has been here for us. This city don't deserve it. However, I understand that a lot of others do. But we can't do this here. This is Wakanda. It's sacred. It must be protected.
Okay, so can we please cut the crap? Cut the crap about what happened at the Capitol, that hour-long riot at the Capitol was the worst thing ever, and somehow it shows how the entire country is built on the foundation, the bedrock of racism, because if those were black people, those were BLM rioters, they'd have been mowed down like dogs in the street. It'd have been a firing squad would have just came out and mowed them down. Can we stop that? That crap? And share this video, man. Let's try to get 100 shares on this video, man. I've been looking at the shares lately. The shares looking weak. We might get 1 or 2 shares on a video. Y'all know it's true because you can look at yourself right now. You know you ain't sharing these videos. So stop it. You're scared. Terrified to share these videos. Them liberals share. You see all the crap they share on Facebook and Twitter? And this is real. That was the biggest story of the summer. How the police just let these people destroy these cities. Yet we got to hear about, if that would have been black people. Conservatives rioted for an hour. And they can't fly. They took down Parler. They trying to impeach the president. Black folk and white liberals rioted for 6 straight months. And the police stood by and watched. There was nothing. Nothing changed. There were no measures taken to change anything. The only measure that was taken was that Biden won the election. Because of the mail-in votes. They got out the early mail-in votes. But by causing all this pain, and I want to tell y'all something, too. Around the time, right before Floyd, was the time we were all stuck in the house watching Last Dance. The great documentary of this great black man who became a billionaire in America, and his come up, his ups and downs, his trials and tribulations. Michael Jordan. We all in the house enjoying every Sunday night, waiting for Last Dance to come on. And it was just and the country was just loving on each other. Everybody was at peace. Unemployment was at an all-time low. We were fighting this new new pandemic that we'd never seen before. But that we were optimistic about it. And the Democrats knew that there was no way they could win the election like that. So they took a random guy in Minneapolis and turned him into the biggest figure of the decade. He's the biggest figure of the entire decade. Floyd. A guy who could have just went to, well, I'm a proponent of go and do your time. Don't fight out in the street. Because you can just go to jail for a day. Like something like using a counterfeit bill, you only go to jail for, even if you get locked up, you'll go to jail and you'll be out in a few hours. Or at the most, they'll let you out the next day. These are charges, like, a lot of y'all don't know how jail work. Like, they can't keep everybody in jail. Like, they give you a court date. Yeah, they're going to give you a court date to come back in court, but they're letting you go for counterfeit bill. Only problem is Floyd was on parole for armed robbery, where he stuck a gun in a pregnant woman's stomach and ransacked her house after pretending to be worked for the water department. Got her to open the door because he knocked on the door, said water department. He was dressed up in a water department uniform. This unsuspecting woman opened the door, and then George came in, put a gun to her stomach, and all his boys came in and robbed the joint. So he was on parole for that. So he probably wasn't going to get out the next day. But most of you brothers, if you're using a counterfeit bill, you're getting out the next day or you're getting out in a few hours. I promise you that. And then you had the Brooks guy down in Atlanta, Rayshard. Drunk driving, even though it's a serious thing, you can hurt a lot of people on the street, you're getting out the next day. Especially if it's your first offense. And we don't see any priors on his record for drunk driving. He was going to get out the next day. They were going to take him to the drunk tank. That's why they call the jail the drunk tank. Because so many people coming there for drunk driving or being drunk, publicly drunk. It's called the drunk tank. Only problem is he wouldn't have got out the next day because he was on parole for child cruelty. Cruelty to children. But most of you guys are going to get out the next day for these minor charges. So make sure you guys don't fight the cops and become a hashtag or become a reason that we protest and loot and tear up the streets. Peace. I'm out.